Greetings, I am Teya. 2 weeks ago, I stepped into what I believed was merely a quarterly meeting. Instead, my father entrusted the company I had painstakingly built, every late night, every pitch deck, every dollar of it, to my sister. He locked eyes with me and declared, "She will take the helm as CEO from this moment forward. All it takes is a bit more effort on your part." Without a hint of caution. There is no explanation provided. A simple smile accompanied by a casual shrug. As if I were merely the assistants. Yet, I remained silent. I did not plead. I placed a single phone call. As my father laid eyes on the documents clutched in Jude's hands, a pallor washed over his face, as if the weight of revelation had finally struck him, who had truly forged the empire and who held the rightful claim to it. Before we embark on this journey, allow me to pose a question to you. At what hour are you tuning into this, and from which location are you viewing it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I absorbed the thoughts and stories of all around me. The dawn was infused with the sense of cedar and concrete. The aroma lingered on the glass and steel that I had once battled fiercely to construct. I entered the front doors of Maddox HQ, my headquarters, my heels clicking gently against the polished floors, echoing like punctuation in a story that had lost its audience. I straightened the lapel of my navy blazer and cast my gaze toward the wall behind reception. My name remained inscribed in that place. Teya Maddox. Originator. For a moment, that meant something. The front desk clerk offered a hesitant smile, her gaze swiftly dropping to the screen before her. A sense of unease lingered in the air. I made my way to the main conference room, anticipation building for the quarterly investor strategy session that had consumed my thoughts and efforts for weeks. Just as I was about to reach the door, a young assistant I had never seen before hurried towards me, panting for breath. "Ah, Ms. Maddox." "Here," she said, thrusting a glossy program into my hand. "There was uncertainty about your early arrival." I opened my eyes wide. Arriving ahead of time for what purpose? She was already gone. I looked down. Inauguration of the new CEO. Celebrating heritage. Welcoming what lies ahead. The font stood out with its boldness. Intense. I glanced over the roster of speakers. Leora Maddox. Victor Maddox. Eleanor Maddox. My name lay hidden in the fine print. Teya Maddox. Originator. No opportunity to speak. No reference to ongoing leadership. Merely an artifact. A brief annotation. My heart pounded heavily. The smooth surface beneath my feet wavered unexpectedly, as if it were alive with uncertainty. As I swung the boardroom doors wide, a sense of anticipation filled the air. They had gathered, each one present in that moment. Those who hold the reins of finance, the leaders of industry, my family, and Leora. She stood near the podium in a tailored ivory pantsuit, radiating an aura as if she had just triumphed in both a beauty pageant and a prestigious award ceremony within the same week. I surveyed the seats. My usual spot, 3 chairs from center, had a fresh placard. It now stated, Chief Strategy Officer Leora Maddox. My name seemed to vanish into thin air. An usher gestured for me to make my way to the far end of the row. There is no nameplate present. Merely a chair. I sat. Gradually. The lights softened, casting a gentle glow upon the stage. My father advanced with a beaming smile and confident stance, holding the microphone as if he were a preacher at a spirited gathering. Today, he began, we gather to commemorate the very essence upon which this company stands. And we pay tribute to the silent architect of its success, my eldest daughter, Teya. Cheers and claps filled the air. Respectful. Isolated. She embodies strength and resilience, the foundation upon which we build our dreams and aspirations. I opened my eyes in surprise. My throat constricted. A feeling stirred within me, signaling that he was far from finished. And now, he continued, turning toward Leora, we enter a new chapter, one of innovation, visibility, and brilliance. Please welcome our new CEO, Leora Maddox. The sound of applause roared, a crescendo that eclipsed anything I had ever experienced before. My body felt frozen, as if time itself had come to a standstill. Leora ascended the stage, her smile illuminating the room, and commenced her speech, a familiar cadence that struck me as one I had penned myself. It wasn't for her, but rather for a company culture video created 2 years prior. She had raised it, word by word. What we leave behind is not merely a mark, but the essence we infuse into the ongoing journey of growth. In the midst of a pandemic, I softly shared those words with my team, as we navigated the challenges together, facing low morale while I stood firm. At that moment, she was absent, exploring her identity in Italy. At that moment, she had taken hold of what was once mine. A colleague, Alan from marketing, glanced my way. Our gazes locked for a fleeting moment, and I offered a slight nod, accompanied by a smile that felt more like a mask than a gesture of warmth. I had no intention of shedding tears. Not amidst a crowd of applause for someone taking my place. Throughout my life, my mother's gaze never fell upon me, not even a single time. With a radiant smile directed at Leora, she adjusted her pearls, exuding a sense of knowing that seemed to have been with her all along. Indeed, she had. It struck me with an unspoken force, leaving me breathless. Months ago, they orchestrated this without my knowledge. I remained seated, my hands tightly gripped beneath the table, motionless, as unyielding as granite. As my fingers brushed against the fabric of my blazer pocket, I felt something unexpected hidden within. The aged fountain pen. The individual from my high school days. TM, persisting your creation, etched along its barrel. A cherished present from my mother upon my acceptance into architecture school. Humorous. I rolled it between my thumb and forefinger, feeling the weight, remembering the day she said, "You don't need noise to be powerful." I held it with a firmer grasp. Are you seeking tranquility? I shall grant you silence. Not the silence of surrender. The stillness of thought, resonating in its own way. I chose not to leave in a rush. I moved through the sound of clapping, gliding by the glass doors and heading directly to the elevator. I pressed the button, and the elevator began its ascent to the top floor. I believed I had control over my surroundings, maintaining a composed expression and an unwavering posture. Yet within, a story was unfolding. Silently, yet swiftly. As the elevator doors slid apart, I found myself in a hallway that once welcomed me with a sense of pride. It simply gazed back, devoid of emotion, untouched, as though I had never been a part of its existence. I strode confidently toward my office, the sound of my heels echoing against the marble, a reminder of my presence in this space. The initial strike struck my desk. As I settled into my chair, I flicked on my computer, fingers poised over the keyboard, entering my credentials, password, and the two-step code, just the routine I followed every day. Permission not granted. My eyelids fluttered momentarily. Made another attempt. Rejected. For the third time. Excluded from entry. My heart remained calm. It came to a halt. I leaned away from the desk just as my assistant, a spirited young woman named Fiona, glanced in through the doorway. Her steps faltered as she caught sight of me. With a tablet cradled in one hand, she clutched her phone tightly in the other, as if it were a lifeline. "Hey, Teya," she murmured, her voice fragile. "Your account is currently in a state of transition." "A shift?" I reiterated. She took a deep breath and swallowed. It was stated, in accordance with the new leadership protocol. A knot formed in my stomach. "Fiona, I require access to my project files, including the pitch decks and the R&D updates." She paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "I must consult with Leora." The name fell heavily, sinking deep within me. Fiona cast her gaze downward, a flush of embarrassment creeping over her. In a hushed tone, she revealed, "They've already updated your title in the directory." I chose not to respond. I rose to my feet and moved past her. The hallways appeared familiar yet distorted, reminiscent of a childhood home stripped bare and remodeled for the market. I walked by the wall that once displayed my portrait, a depiction of myself, arms crossed, grinning in front of the inaugural prototype lab. At this moment, a sleek brushed metal frame cradled a soft pastel poster. Achieving success is a collective endeavor. They lacked the courtesy to fill in the holes left by the previous screws. I pressed on, moving beyond the collaborative space I had crafted when teamwork was merely a trendy phrase, beyond the transparent innovation center I had fervently presented to potential backers, beyond the mark I had left, until I arrived at the distant edge, the newly established executive wing. I had taken charge of its construction, financing it personally when the board wavered on providing funds. I recalled the moment I signed the final check, a sum in the 7 figures, and I told myself, this is the point where we expand from here. At this moment, a gold plaque shimmered next to the double doors. The Leora Maddox Leadership Center stands as a beacon of inspiration and growth. Not a single word about me, not even a line. I gazed at it for what felt like an eternity, the name glimmering in the light, proud and self-satisfied, and then I took an action I hadn't dared to take in years. I pivoted and made my way out, neither rushed nor embarrassed, yet not quite prepared to unleash a cry either. Upon arriving at the parking garage, I settled into my car. I simply took a seat. The stillness enveloped me, allowing the rhythmic ticking of the cooling engine to pierce through the quiet air. I extended my hand toward my phone, unlocked it, and navigated through the contact list, gliding past my mother, past Leora, past the family group chat. I paused at Jude Era Council, a name that had remained untouched since our last encounter with a hostile acquisition, a man well-versed in every contract I had ever signed, every clause I had battled for. I refrained from calling, not just yet. In that moment, I delved into my purse, retrieved my journal, and turned to a pristine page, ready to capture the unfolding story. As I wrote, my handwriting appeared serene, contrasting sharply with the turmoil within me. With cheerful faces, they gathered all, yet I held on to one precious thing, the truth. I took a moment to reflect, then emphasized it with an underline. Twice. A subtle change stirred within me, not anger, at least not the explosive kind. It was a substance more profound, ancient, akin to coal poised for ignition. I gently closed the journal, placing it softly on my lap. As my fingers glided over the fabric of my purse, they found their way to the familiar shape of the pen nestled within the inside pocket. The ancient one. Etched, TM, continue crafting. I grasped it delicately, my thumb gliding over the initials etched into its surface. The burden of it. It bore the weight of stories untold. It bore the weight of years. As I stood on the front porch that graduation night, clad in my cap and gown, I could see my mother adjusting the tassel, her hand steady as she handed me the pen wrapped in parchment. She had whispered, urging you not to allow them to shape your legacy. It is yours to define. Silently, if you choose, yet entirely. That very mother had risen this morning and applauded for Leora. As I gazed over the expanse of the parking lot, the sun painted elongated shadows that danced across the marked lines. I was not shedding tears. Yet, there was a smoldering sensation deep within my gaze, akin to parched parchment poised to ignite. With a steadying inhale, I flicked the pen open and began to write once more. As the clock approached 11, I finally arrived home. The city lay still, enveloped in that peculiar hush that follows a momentous change. I had parked in the familiar garage, ascended the same 4 floors, and turned the same key, yet something felt amiss, as if I had stepped into a different realm. The apartment was tidy, softly illuminated by the kitchen sconces I had yet to replace. I removed my shoes at the entrance and paused for a moment, my coat still draped over me, the bag still resting on my shoulder. Reluctance filled my heart at the thought of moving. Refused to take a seat. It felt as though the very atmosphere held its breath, anticipating my revelation before granting me the solace of rest. At last, I found myself at the small desk tucked away in the corner of the living room. I chose not to illuminate the room with the lamp. I delved into the depths of the bottom drawer and retrieved an aged leather folder, its edges frayed, creased from countless years of being tucked away in briefcases and left behind beneath piles of conference notes. 2 years ago, I had carelessly tossed it into the glove box, intending to organize it properly, yet it remained untouched. Isn't it amusing how life allows you to put off everything, yet it never lets you delay when it comes to betrayal? I turned the pages of stock agreements, trademark certificates, and LLC filings. The aroma of worn paper and fresh printer toner lingered in the air, enveloping the surroundings. In that moment, it came into view. Revising the founder role at Maddox and Company. Written with precision at the top of a solitary page, my name rests just beneath it, Teya Maddox. And then, in that moment, my signature graced the bottom. A gradual, rhythmic warmth ascended along my neck. I lifted the page, drawing it nearer to the warm glow of the kitchen light. It remains unnamed, shrouded in ambiguity. It is referred to as streamlining, succession clarity, or foundational structure. Yet this marked a transition of responsibility. This was the moment I unwittingly sealed my own disappearance. And the moment came rushing back to me, vivid and clear. At the age of 26, I found myself at a pivotal moment in life. Soaring from the success of our second investment round, I felt a mix of exhaustion and pride, my gaze still reflecting the vision of what we were creating. In the dim light of Dad's study, we found ourselves surrounded by the whispers of stories untold. With a warm smile, he presented me the form alongside a glass of Pinot. "It's merely a matter of legal tidiness, darling," he remarked, lightly tapping the paper with his pen. "Forever, you will remain my companion. This serves to clarify your sister's position for the board's understanding." Unambiguous. He spoke as if I were already shielded. That night, I found myself enveloped in a sense of fatigue. I overlooked the details in the fine print. My desire was to place my trust in him. I longed to feel that my identity as his daughter held significance that transcended mere genetics. At this moment, the trust clung to me, an unwelcome residue I couldn't wash away. I placed the page aside and rose to my feet, craving fresh air. I approached the window. The skyline stared down, unyielding and detached. And then, as if a soft voice was brushing against my ear, a memory danced into view. A gathering of friends and laughter. In the previous year, our team organized a fundraising gala atop a charming boutique hotel in the heart of downtown. In the dimly lit hallway, just beside the restrooms, I found myself adjusting the clasp on my bracelet. I could hear the soft, playful laughter of Leora and her friend drifting from behind the bathroom door. "She constructs." Leora let out a hearty laugh. "She will remain oblivious to what I'm taking." A moment of stillness enveloped the scene. Then came another wave of laughter. Joyful moments over a glass of wine. Bubbling with assurance. I recall laughing then, dismissing it lightly. I convinced myself it was just playful teasing between siblings. Only a cacophony. Unworthy of nourishment. At this moment? Now it unfolded like a revelation adorned in crimson hues. I made my way back to the desk and took a seat. The legal form lay before me, a stark reminder of a moment frozen in time. With a sense of nostalgia, I grasped the pen my mother gifted me on graduation day and began to scribble thoughts onto a notepad. Words emerged effortlessly, flowing from my mind. She constructs. I create a story. Forever, you will remain my companion. Merely some administrative tidying up. All of it pointed to a singular truth. They believed I would remain passive forever. They believed I would continue constructing as they rebranded each brick I placed. I reclined and gazed at the ceiling, my heart calm yet unhurried. In a moment of instinct, I reached for my phone and launched the Messages app. Moved the cursor downward. Jude R. On the council. I pressed the number. It chimed once. On the other hand, he spoke with the familiar tone I recalled from years past, steady and straightforward. "I was curious when you would reach out," he remarked. And I let out a breath, the sound lingering in the space between relief and intensity. Morning light crept through my blinds in delicate, angled lines, reminiscent of gilded prison bars. Sleep had eluded me. Sleep was unnecessary for me. Answers were essential to me. I stood under the cascade, the water flowing around me, yet my mind drifted elsewhere, barely registering its presence. I slipped into a dark blazer, the fabric brushing against the blouse that had once accompanied me during my pitch to our initial round of angel investors. With a fluid motion, I tucked my keycard into my bag, as if my body knew the routine by heart. Though my name may have vanished from the website, the very walls still whispered the story of their creator. That morning, the flow of midtown traffic seemed to favor my journey. The clock had just ticked past 8 as I eased my car into the garage under the Maddox and Comer headquarters. The familiar security guard acknowledged me with a nod, a gesture born of routine, but then he paused, his gaze flickering to his walkie-talkie. I acknowledged with a subtle nod, maintaining my pace effortlessly. The lobby was infused with the scent of polished stone mingling with the soothing aroma of lavender diffuser oil. Fresh. Deliberate. Chilly. As I approached the elevator, my hand instinctively moved to retrieve my badge. Silence reigns. I made another attempt. Yet again, there is nothing. A gentle whisper lingered in the air behind me. Ms. Maddox? I pivoted. A receptionist I had only recently become acquainted with, perhaps 2 months into her role, stood at the desk, her eyes wide and her fingers nervously twisting a pen. I was instructed not to allow you access. A stillness enveloped us. I left it empty. She averted her gaze first. With a soft voice, she murmured her apology. I sealed my lips and gave a single nod. Not directed at her. In the midst of the absurdity. No directory listing available. The badge is not functioning. And it seems there was no clearance in the very building I had assisted in bringing to life, from the initial blueprint to the final brick. I lingered in the shadows of the lobby, feeling like an observer in the story of my own existence. It was at that moment that she came into view. Leora swept through the revolving doors with the grace of a star stepping onto a glamorous set, her flowing beige slacks and crisp white blouse perfectly complementing her vibrant green juice in one hand and her phone in the other. Her heels whispered against the tile, a soft echo in the stillness. She caught sight of me and bestowed a smile that seemed almost plastic in its perfection. Well, she remarked with a cheerful tone, you're early. I am employed here, I stated. In response to that, she took a sip from the bottle. We are currently navigating a phase of transformation, embracing a shift in our culture and refining our processes. My gaze was fixed upon her. Are you referring to a takeover? She inclined her head slightly. I leaned towards evolution. A moment of stillness hung in the air. She moved in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that the receptionist couldn't catch. This quarter, I invite you to accompany me and observe my work. Watch closely. Move smoothly into the next phase. Think of it as a deep dive. I remained utterly still. This company was founded by me. And now, she said with a graceful confidence, you have the opportunity to discover how to keep pace. The atmosphere surrounding us shattered with a sound reminiscent of brittle frost. I remained silent, choosing not to utter another word. I pivoted and stepped outside, retracing my path through the revolving doors, glancing at the familiar security guard whose gaze flickered downward once more, avoiding my eyes entirely. I approached my car, my hand steady, as the fury transformed into a clarity that cut deeper than sorrow. As I unlocked my phone, a world of possibilities awaited me. A cascade of 48 new emails, each one marked by its own subject line, unfolding like a story waiting to be told. Thrilled about the upcoming Maddox and Comer vision. The unveiling of a new brand identity. Hats off to CEO Leora Maddox for this remarkable achievement. Exceptional design vision. So fresh. I tapped one open. The branding images? Mine. I'd sketched those out in my dining room 6 months ago. The slogan? A line I'd crafted for a Forbes feature that never got published. The investor contact sheet attached to the internal memo? I had built it name by name, coffee by coffee. And nowhere, not in the press kit, not in the credits, not in the footer, was my name. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't scream. I simply forwarded the email to Jude with one line in the subject. "How much do I own on paper again?" He responded within 60 seconds, enough to make them very, very nervous. I leaned back against the seat, closed my eyes, and let the hum of traffic buzz around me. I wasn't furious anymore. I was focused, because if they wanted war dressed as wellness, they were about to see what a woman looks like when she builds with fire instead of blueprints. 3 days later, I stood outside the marble lobby of Lockridge and Rowe, the downtown firm where Maddox and COA's earliest contracts were notarized, where our first Series A investment was signed, and where my name used to mean something. This boardroom was selected with intention, not for its neutrality, but for its distinct character. A junior associate hesitantly opened the door, casting a quick, anxious look my way as I entered the room. The carpet exuded a subdued navy hue, its tight weave offering little flexibility beneath one's feet. The atmosphere of the space conveyed a clear message: express your thoughts and then depart. I donned black, neither somber nor ostentatious, simply exact. A gentle wool suit, acquired long ago for a deposition that ultimately never took place. With my hair neatly pulled back and my heels grounded yet steady, I stand poised. As I stepped inside, Jude rose to his feet, offering a single nod before motioning toward the head of the elongated walnut table. It was his silent invitation, a clear signal that this space was now mine to claim. Before me were 7 individuals, a mix of men and women, many with silver hair and a quiet demeanor. Some were familiar faces I hadn't encountered in years, while others were those I had once persuaded and nurtured alongside. A few gazed at me now with an expression that lingered in the space between regret and admiration. Mr. Redmond, a figure who once remarked that I carried myself like a builder of empires rather than mere decks, leaned in and whispered, "You didn't deserve what they did." I chose to remain silent. I found no reason to. Jude set the thick folder before me, treating it with the same solemnity one might reserve for sacred texts. "Shall we embark on this journey?" I spoke, adjusting my tone. There was a profound silence, as if the air itself held its breath, and no one dared to voice a dissenting thought. I opened the folder and turned to the section marked Governance. There it stood, a moment frozen in time. The founding documents, amendments, and the breakdown of the voting structure all led to a significant moment, where right beneath the dotted line on the founder role revision agreement, there lay an emptiness waiting to be filled. Without a signature, without initials, without consent. I raised the page and angled it in their direction. "This," I said, "was the document my father announced to the public as finalized. As you can see, it never was." A whisper rolled across the room like a shifting wind. Paper rustled, glasses were adjusted. One board member narrowed their eyes at the document and inquired quietly, "So the 62%? "It remains my own," I declared. The stillness grew more profound. Not the type that sought clarification, but rather the one that recognized a shift in perspective. A power shift. I continued onward. As I opened my briefcase, my fingers brushed against a solitary page, its crisp edges a reminder of the task at hand. Straightforward and to the point, here's a list. I shared it with others. Over the next 30 days, I mentioned, we will be reviewing these internal placements. Units, positions, spending, project outlines. The names held significance. Leora had guided each one into the room. Every individual had positioned their marks to obliterate my own. "This isn't about vengeance," I added. "It involves managing risks." No one spoke. Jude leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Maddox is asserting her position as the primary stakeholder. The board must prioritize the company's integrity above all else, rather than succumbing to familial favoritism." Redmond cleared his throat. "What about the impact on public relations?" "I will take care of that," I assured. Truth consistently garners more favorable attention than denial. I allowed the quiet to linger, feeling its heaviness seep into the wood of the table. Then I rose to my feet. Before collecting my belongings, I met each of their gazes, not with anger, but with the serenity that follows a storm. once, I allowed my name to fade away. Such an occurrence will not repeat itself. The room remained silent as I stepped out, the sound of my heels cutting through their astonishment. I pressed forward, fully aware that this chapter was far from finished. The rain poured relentlessly since the late afternoon, drenching the sidewalks and transforming the city into a shimmering haze of gray. When I finally arrived home, the clock had already struck 9. The tile floor of my foyer bore the subtle, muddy traces left by my shoes. I let my coat fall onto the hook, filled a glass with water, and made my way to my home office, the one sanctuary that remained truly my own. It wasn't until my eyes fell upon it. Before my door lay a red-sealed envelope, its presence both intriguing and mysterious. No postage required. There is no address for returns. My name etched in bold, sharp lines, as if it had been chiseled with purpose. I lowered myself, grasped it, and gazed intently at the wax seal. The crest mirrored the one my father had chosen for the founding letterhead of our company. I chose not to take a seat. I remained still. As I stood barefoot in my hallway, I opened it right there. A solitary page. Stop and Refrain. By Maddox and Cohen. Executed by his legal representative. From this moment onward, you are required to halt any aggressive business actions directed at Maddox and Company and its executives, or you will confront a civil injunction. I found myself revisiting the line thrice, yet the words remained steadfast, unyielding in their meaning. They remained as vivid and surreal as the instant I first laid eyes on them. My own father had proclaimed a battle of legality. There wasn't even a phone call. A sealed warning lay at my door, as if I were an unwelcome stranger. Or perhaps something even more dire. A foe. I approached my desk, the paper clutched tightly, and powered on my laptop. It was at that moment that everything changed. The initiation process was more prolonged than what is typically expected. The fan whirred to life, the screen flickered twice, and then it found its calm, revealing a desktop that felt almost too ordinary. A peculiar symbol flickered softly in the lower corner. A folder I had neglected for weeks unexpectedly revealed its presence, marked as last accessed at 9:32 p.m. It remained untouched by my hands. In an instant, the sound of my phone ringing broke through my thoughts. Jude. His voice carried attention. Teya, it's time to update your passwords. At this moment. What transpired? Your journal is being leaked. Curated selections. Images captured from the screen. Initially appearing on gossip blogs, it later made its way to various startup news platforms. The headlines are far from favorable. I clicked open Safari. My stomach twisted. Founder's mental breakdown in private pages. A surreal chronicle of a once mighty CEO's descent. She crafted a vision, only to become engulfed by it. Amidst the headlines lay fragments torn from their original narratives. A sentence I crafted during a challenging moment following my mother's chemotherapy treatment. Another chapter unfolds after my breakup with Elias. The ache within me. I find myself questioning. Everything depicted as uncertainty. And yet, all was genuine. Simply contorted. I closed the laptop with a deliberate slowness. My hand quivers with uncertainty. In that fleeting instant, the only sound that reached my ears was the tempest raging beyond the walls. The rhythmic patter of rain against the glass, reminiscent of delicate knuckles tapping softly. As I entered the kitchen, I found myself standing before the tall mirror that leaned gracefully against the wall. My reflection gazed back at me. Weary. Moist. Unmasked. Yet still intact. In my other hand, I still clutched the cease and desist. So they desire conflict, I murmured gently. With a deliberate turn, I made my way to the printer nestled in the corner of the room, where I opened a pristine blank document. I crafted a single sentence. Only a single one. On the day they wiped me from existence, I began to jot down my thoughts. I have printed it. Simple black ink. I carefully took the page, slid it into a clear folder, and placed it gently atop the red envelope. That was my response. I would refrain from raising my voice. I would not twirl. I would allow the truth to reveal itself. And I would ensure that my voice resonated with them. Each and every word. And now, they were about to discover the full extent of the meticulous notes. The daybreak following the tempest, I stepped into Jude's office. Without any makeup. No regrets. Only a folder, a phone, and a silence so profound it spoke volumes beyond mere words. He never inquired about the quality of my rest. We were both aware of the truth that lay before us. He pushed the manila folder across the table in my direction. Therein, he said. Every share, every document, every shell layer verified. The ownership of the holding structure is now officially in your name. I gazed intently at the signatures. My hands remained steady. It is not advisable for them to do so. Ultimately, this was not an act of vengeance. This was history being corrected. It was never about seizing it from them, I murmured, as if in quiet reflection. It revolves around revealing to them that it was never theirs in the first place. Jude offered a subtle smile. Then let us reveal what we are capable of. The sun sank gracefully behind the skyline as I emerged from the car, standing before the peninsula. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Friday evening unfolded. A grand charity gala awaits. Cameras already blinking to life outside the revolving doors. I knew the floor plan by heart. The ballroom had been the site of our first investor dinner, back when Maddox and Cobra was still just an idea scribbled on cocktail napkins. Now it looked like a coronation. Inside, everything glittered in silver and white. My father was already seated near the front, a custom lapel pin catching the light. Celine, in a champagne silk gown, was laughing at something one of the hosts said, her fingers toying with a crystal flute. She didn't see me. Perhaps she failed to see me in the black velvet dress I donned. Subtle yet precise. Intentional. Eyes lingered, yet the gaze was different now. Not with compassion. Amidst the haze of unpredictability. It felt like a struggle to recall the allegiance I had chosen in the midst of the conflict. I settled into my seat in the fourth row. Not in the open. Not in the rear. Simply, existing. Here and now. After a brief pause, the host stepped into the spotlight. Once the customary moments of charity recognition and rounds of applause had passed, he took a moment to clear his throat. And now, it is my great pleasure to welcome our final honoree. A visionary, a trailblazer, and a figure forever etched in history. Let us come together to honor Teya Maddox, the distinguished pioneer of the year for this year. Initially, I remained still. They rose gradually, the silence enveloping the room more swiftly than any cheer. I approached the stage, deliberately avoiding the gaze of my family. The sound of my heels resonated more intensely than I had anticipated. As I stood at the podium, the host gracefully presented the plaque in my direction. I shook my head in disbelief. I did not arrive here to embrace anything, I declared, my voice unwavering. I arrived to set the story straight. A brief glimmer of uncertainty danced upon the host's features. He took a step back. I delved into the slender leather folder nestled under my arm and extracted a solitary page. Affirmed. Marked with certainty. Officially certified. This, I declared, presenting it to the microphone, represents the ownership structure of Maddox Holdings. Just 3 days prior, it was officially concluded and acknowledged in accordance with both federal and state legislation. With deliberate slowness, I shifted my focus to the front row. My sister was never the chief executive officer. Not in accordance with the law. Not in terms of finances. In no realm where honesty holds significance. Gasps echoed with a force that shook the very air of the room. Celine rose suddenly, her cheeks burning with emotion. That's a lie, she retorted sharply. Father, please share your story with them. Yet he remained seated. He gazed at the paper in my hand as if it had suddenly ignited into flames. She glanced over her shoulder at me. The revision was signed by you years ago. I witnessed it unfold before my eyes. A soft smile graced my lips, subtle and serene. Absolutely not, Celine. A draft caught your eye. You were never privy to the ultimate rendition. The one that remained unsigned. I cast my gaze over the audience. What lies beneath is straightforward. The framework you admired. The brand that captured your admiration. The guests of honor you've welcomed this evening. They belong to me. My intention was never to seek recognition for it. I created it out of a conviction that transcended my individual identity. Yet, as that name has been tarnished, wiped away, and misused, this evening I take it back for myself. The stillness in the room held a weight of its own. The atmosphere was electric. It was akin to the instant just prior to a bolt of lightning illuminating the sky. As I prepared to walk away, I took a moment to lean into the mic once more. And then I spoke those words. The utterance that left the entire room in stunned silence. This company was not passed down to me. I constructed it. For the past 8 years, I have been the one providing the financial support for it. Isolated. The ensuing quiet was anything but courteous. It was taken aback. It was one of those instances when the effervescence of the champagne seemed to fade away. As I took a step back from the podium, I passed the microphone to the astonished host and made my way off the stage. As I stepped into the hallway, the buzzing of my phone echoed in the air. Written works. A multitude. Then countless. A young staff member, fresh from her undergraduate studies, captured the entire speech from her seat at the back and swiftly shared it on TikTok within moments. In a remarkable twist, her perspective captured it all. My voice. Celine's face. My father's silence. No filters. No edits. Simply unfiltered, immediate experience. What does the caption say? When the family scapegoat turns the tables? Experience life to the fullest. As I arrived at the elevator, I discovered that the clip had already captured the attention of over 70,000 viewers. By the time I got to the executive suite upstairs, a major news network had picked it up for a breaking segment. A dramatic corporate rivalry unfolds at a Chicago gala, leaving a lasting impression. I refrained from smiling. I remained completely still, unflinching. As I stepped into the room, I found my father and Celine already there, their presence filling the space with an unspoken anticipation. The air within felt heavy, reminiscent of velvet drapes and fragrances attempting to conceal an underlying decay. My father lingered by the minibar, his drink swirling in the glass, untouched and waiting. Celine moved restlessly, her heels tapping rhythmically against the marble floor, each sound echoing like a delicate hammer striking a surface. You caught us off guard, she spat, before I had even closed the door. In front of investors and the press, you brought shame upon this family. I simply corrected a falsehood, I stated with composure. A number, indeed. My father adjusted his tie, his gaze fixed on the ground, lost in thought. It was only a matter of time before you orchestrated something like this. The unfeeling nature that runs through it. Your mother mentioned that it originated from your grandmother. Do you believe this revolves around temperament? I inquired. This tale unfolds through years of choices made without my knowledge, funds siphoned from my efforts, recognition taken away, and my legacy redirected. Celine rolled her eyes. You're not a martyr, Teya. Your resentment stems from not being the one in the spotlight. I remained still, unresponsive. Instead, I took a seat at the conference table and unlatched my briefcase. One by one, I arranged 3 folders before me. The first marked ownership proxy transfers, the second designated for private capital contributions, and the final one titled resignation and liability transfer. Are you trying to frame this as a reorganization within the family? Very well, I replied, yet the figures are pristine, thoroughly examined, and submitted to the board. Every dollar I invested, every contract I honored, every deal I finalized, all accomplished without your assistance, resides within these pages. And now the moment has come to determine the way you exit this tale. At last, my father uttered a word, his tone chilling and subdued. This is not the way a family should deal with matters. As our gazes locked, I felt the weight of the moment. Family confronts issues directly, not through intercepted messages and legal threats left at my doorstep. He recoiled. Celine folded her arms across her chest. We will not be driven away. I remained utterly still. While you may hesitate, the board holds the power to act, and if these documents remain unsigned by tonight, they will take action come Monday morning. Silence enveloped the room. Celine was the first to reach for the pen. Though her hand shook, she pressed on without a moment's pause. My father gazed intently. His gaze drifted over the document, yet we both understood he was not truly absorbing its contents. He has just put pen to paper. I moved on swiftly. I abandoned the folders in their resting place and made my way down the hallway, my heels striking the ground with purpose, my breath measured and calm. As I approached the door, a voice from the gala echoed my name, perhaps a reporter, perhaps a guest. I remained steadfast, not turning away. All that needed to be said had been said. The air outside was invigorating and fresh. The streets of Chicago glistened beneath the reflective sheen of freshly washed pavement after the rain. As I slipped into the car that awaited me at the curb, I quietly shut the door, enveloped in silence. Once more, my phone vibrated with a persistent buzz. The clip reached 1 million views, and for the first time in what felt like months, perhaps even years, I sensed a presence, a recognition that I had longed for. In that moment, I experienced a sense of buoyancy, as if I were floating effortlessly through the air. As the first light of dawn broke, I made my way to the spot where everything began and concluded it on my own terms. The street remained untouched by time. The overgrown hedges remained unchanged, and the cracked sidewalk still lifted at the edge, where the relentless push of tree roots had not yet surrendered. The rusted mailbox, a steadfast sentinel, had leaned slightly to the left since 1996. Yet, the woman emerging from the car today was not the girl who once occupied the space, her backpack sliding off one shoulder, hope tightly gripped in a clammy hand. I made my way to the front steps. Absent are the keys, and the welcome mat lies forgotten. The remnants of the past lingered in the air, as the soft morning light danced upon the worn, chipped paint of the porch rail. The deed to this house never bore my name. It was only last week that it happened. A discreet transaction, finalized via a private limited liability company. It was revealed that my father had put it up as collateral to finance one of Celine's expansion ventures 5 years prior. As the tides of the market shifted, he slipped into default, cloaked in silence, wishing to remain unseen. I observed. I kept my identity as the buyer a secret from them. I shall never do that. Within the confines, the atmosphere hung in a quiet anticipation, not lifeless, merely poised for what was to come. The hardwood floors groaned in familiar protest, just as I recalled. The kitchen window continued to capture the morning light around 8 a.m., casting a golden hue onto the familiar patch of tile where I once sat, indulging in cereal and my aspirations. Step by step, I traversed each space. The bedroom that once held my memories, its peach wallpaper faded into the past, now adorned in gentle creams and greens, awaiting the arrival of a new story. The framed photo that once occupied my childhood dresser, the very one my mother had discarded with a brisk, "Don't get sentimental," now graced the front foyer, beautifully restored. The small bronze frame retained the scuff mark I had left when I was 11, yet this time, it brought no pain. With a deliberate motion, I placed the envelope upon the counter. Within the confines of the space, the concluding property documents lay alongside the foundational paperwork, accompanied by a solitary card directed to the new abode. This house felt foreign to me. The space had transformed into a haven, supported by the newly established Maddox Foundation, dedicated to women embarking on a fresh journey. In a single room adorned with a floral quilt and a cozy reading chair, a brass nameplate quietly claimed its presence. For Eleanor Maddox, may you discover the voice that was silenced for so long. Irony may not mend wounds, yet it possesses a voice of its own. As the afternoon sun filtered through the window, I found myself seated in my apartment, a pen poised in my hand, gazing at a letter that remained only partially completed before me. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm not composing this letter in a state of despair. I cease to require that when you ceased your pretense of listening. It transcended wealth and accolades. It was in the subtle moments you allowed me to fade away, until the time came when you sought something to trade. However, I have come to understand something. You are not obligated to love your children, but I had a duty to honor my own self-respect. It was forever within my power to bestow. With a gentle motion, I folded the letter and tucked it away into the depths of a drawer. I will not be sending it through the mail. It is not intended for them. The following morning, I found myself at a quaint little cafe just 2 blocks from the shimmering lake, where I was to meet someone for coffee. She was youthful, keen, brimming with the same subdued intensity one once stifled before stepping into boardrooms. I was advised to be patient and wait for my opportunity, she recounted. I gently swirled my tea, watching the steam rise in delicate tendrils. Refrain from doing that. Her gaze met mine, a swirl of confusion evident in her eyes. Take action now. Refrain from requesting distance. Seek not the approval of others. Construct the table, please. She smiled, not with mere courtesy, but as if she had finally come to terms with her own identity. As I stepped outside, I found myself glancing at a newsstand. The headline continued to unfold, Daughter turns the tables on Dynasty. But that wasn't the story. The tale unfolds with the revelation that I chose not to incinerate everything in a quest for vengeance. I crafted something improved, without seeking recognition. And if you find yourself tuned in at this moment, perhaps you've experienced it as well. Have you ever felt cast aside by those for whom you sacrificed so much? Did you choose to step back, or did you find the strength to express yourself once more? Share your thoughts in the comments. I make it a point to read each one.